Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, candidates, for coming to the forum. Thank you all from the bottom of my heart. By the way, I'm Vinita Verma. I'm PTSA president. And
hi, I'm Palace Chow, and I'm SurfBoardE's chairwoman.
So I'm so glad that SurfBoardE and Centerville PTSA decided to do this forum together for everybody. We have some rules, but the rules had been already sent to the candidates. I hope they all know. If they have read the email, they might know. Just so that you guys know that the biggest rule is going to be that you cannot cheer when the candidate is speaking. I expect everybody to be quiet, listen, and so that we can move on to the next candidate. We don't want to waste any time for the cheers. You can cheer at the end as much as you want, but not for each candidate. I don't want you to start screaming your candidates' names. There is not going to be any literature handouts by any of the candidates. There is not going to be any distribution of literature by any of the candidates. Those are the very basic rules. And I'm sure Liz is going to speak about the other rules that we discussed. Okay, so let me introduce you with the whole team.
Hello, my name is Liz Fisher. I'm currently serving at Fremont Council as the Executive Vice President.
Hi, I'm Chitra Arunachalam. I'm a parent at FUSD.
Hi, my name is Megan Noel Preddy. I attend American High School, and I'm here as part of SURF.
So you can see Centerville is in center. So since we are in center, we try to centralize everything. We try to accommodate all the candidates. We try to accommodate all the students from all these schools and parents. So, for example, Chitra is from Mission. Liz is from FUSD as such, because she has been through so much. She is beyond everybody. I'm from Centerville PTSA, of course, and Paris over here is from American High. You are from? She's also from American High. Zuhair is from Washington. So, thank you once again, and without wasting any further time, let's start the forum.
Welcome again, candidates. Thank you for coming tonight. You may have already heard or seen the rules regarding to the timing of our questions. The questions were submitted to us by the community, and we distilled them to be 8 questions, which Pale and I will be alternating, or maybe it's 9, but nonetheless, each question you'll get a minute to speak. You'll be given a 15-second warning with a yellow card, and of course the red card means you need to stop. We don't allow any interruptions. Each person will have their turn to speak on the question. We're going to start with Norm, and then proceed down the line with the first question, and then we'll take it to the other end, because by that time, Larry, you'll have the microphone in your hand with the second question, and so on. So it sort of alternates from the outside in. Okay, with that, Norm, I'll start you with the first question. What is your plan to address overcrowding and overloading in schools?
Overcrowding is a major problem in the district because of a lack of facilities. It's going to get worse before it gets better. If you watched the last school board meeting, you saw them dealing with the Thornton Middle School project and the fact that that middle school in 2 years is going to be larger than 3 of our high schools in this district, including Washington. We have to find facilities. We have to find some way, portable classrooms, whatever, to get in to accommodate until we can build the facilities that are needed. But we have a major major problem in the North Plain where there is no land available. We need an elementary school out there, possibly another junior high, and even a high school has been talked about. Warm Springs, they stepped up to do an elementary school with the developers, but there's no junior high or additional high school coming on that. So down the road a few years, we're going to have problems with junior high and high school. So it's one of those we have a major issue to deal with. We have bond funds now, but the board may very well have to go out and ask for another bond issue so we can build the facilities that are needed to house our children and be able to educate them properly.
Thank you. Diane, the same question to you.
Yes, so I think this is one of the biggest challenges that we have in the district right now. Our facilities issues have really reached a crisis point, and there's no question that we have to increase our capacity. If we don't, with our projected enrollments, we're going to need to increase class size, and I think that's something that we all agree that we want to avoid. So we absolutely have to find ways to build more schools, and that's challenging because our district lacks the funds to do that. Even if we find the land, there aren't facilities to build. So we are absolutely going to have to increase our revenues, and that absolutely means going after a new bond. And we're going to have to plan that carefully, thoughtfully, make sure that we're spending the rest of our Measure E funds wisely. But we need that bond to be successful. We can't have a failed bond effort. So we need to put the effort in up front to make sure that that's a successful effort, that we're asking for what we need so that we can deliver.
Maria?
Thank you. So obviously this is a very complicated, issue, and there's no easy solution. So one of the first things that we really need to focus on is making sure that we finish the middle school conversion project on time, because that will free up some space at our elementary schools. The second thing we need to do is really build on successful partnerships that we've had in the past. So the Warm Springs Lila Bringhurst School is an excellent example of one where we partner with developers, the city, and the school district worked hand in hand to have a new school built. They put in about $50 million, we put in about $10 million, and it's going to house 1,100 students. So we need to really build on those relationships. Second thing is the third thing is finding other creative solutions for the facilities we have. A few months ago, or a couple of months ago, there was a proposal at one of the board meetings to move Robertson to the adult school so that we could free up that school site for an elementary school. The fourth thing, of course, is, has been mentioned, is a new bond measure. Hopefully we will need a new bond measure to help upgrade our existing facilities as well as build new schools. And the last thing, of course, is advocate, advocate, advocate. We need to go up to Sacramento and ask for more money. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is a number one issue in the district right now. The overcrowding, we have to fix it. I have friends which she has to drive her kids into two different schools in the morning, which is very troublesome. I think the first solution is we have to work with the city council to have the developer build up more new school and new infrastructure for us, because they have the money. And is their responsibility for us to build up. That's number one. Number two, the existing E funds. I think we should go back, take a look at whether or not we can maximize its utilization. When I take a look at those funds distribution right now, I think there's a lot of places we can cut it off and then take some money out, build up new schools. Other than that, the very important sense, it is the new revenue. Where we should get the new revenue? We have a lot of places we can get it. I think number one, it is the government. Number two is the enterprise. So in Fremont, everybody right now is thinking about it. We need to bring big company into Fremont City. And then for those companies, they should be responsible for some of the budget for us. And I think for doing this, we should solve the overcrowded issue. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Hiu Ing. For 1 minute, I have 3 answers. Number one, this year, I will only support outside, non-developer supported candidates running for the city council. We need the city council to slow down the entire process for new houses development. Number two, in 2014, we actually have passed a $650 million bond at the cost of about $1 billion to the people of Fremont. So I intend to take the remaining money and reprioritize for our overcrowded school, reprioritize so that schools get enough bathrooms, among other things. That's what we have to do. We can no longer just say, 4 years ago we passed this bond, 4 years later we're just gonna go blindly forward. We passed that time. Number three, we must get cost control in place. Without cost control, we'll just keep spending too much money. We're not getting the biggest bang for the buck. We're just sort of like, yeah, every classroom is about $1 million, $900,000. That's okay? No.
Thank you. Larry?
Thank you. The question is, what are we going to do now? We're kind of in a hole. We're in a reactionary mode. The City Council for years has never used the school district as an active partner. They've actually, whenever they've had a city charter or a plan, they've never included schools in that plan because they say that's not their responsibility. One of the things that made Warm Springs work was the City Council said, we're not going to approve this until the school board goes in there and approves what we're going to do with the developers. They should be doing that with everything. We recently had a situation with the Williamson site, that property that's adjacent to Washington, where we were going to get that property. We did long negotiations with the city. It was all ready to go. And the night before we're supposed to vote on it, the city said they're going to add conditions into it. And those conditions were going to be the developers get to go to the schools that they choose. Typically, we use that, which is our only leverage at all, to get additional dollars in mitigation so that we can afford to build the classrooms needed to address the students that are generated by that development. That night, the City Council voted 5-0, essentially, to work with the developers against the school district. So we didn't get $4 to $8 million that we needed. That has to stop. So what we need right now is to acquire property, which is what we're doing. The Horse property is one, the Williamson site is another, Rick's is another. We're acquiring as fast as we can at the lowest price we can. But as you're going to see at the board meeting on this Wednesday night, at our latest development at Horner, the costs now are going to go 56% above projections.
Thank you. I'm going to turn the mic over to Palais.
Hello. So the second question is, as a board member, how will you coach the next generation of leaders to choose integrity and ethics as the norm, even if it is a tough choice? Larry Sweeney.
When we work with student board members, the best way to coach is to model the behavior that you want people to follow. So I think as a board, this board and the boards previous to it have been very cooperative and very collaborative in trying to find an answer. It's a disagree and commit type of view. You might disagree with the outcome. You might be a strong advocate for the side that didn't get picked. But once the decision is made, you move forward from that. And that's a really important decision, because without doing that behavior, you're going to constantly repeat the same mistakes. Integrity is doing what you say you'll do. You have to be transparent. You have to be accountable. You have to be accessible. You have to say that which is the truth and not which others people want you to say. So that's where integrity comes from, and you have to do it over and over and over again. The best way to prove to people that you're capable of transferring those skills to others is to keep modeling that yourself. We try and give our students lots of opportunity. This year, the SurfBoardE is working on the calendar. That's fantastic. It's going to show just how difficult it is to move the needle, but they're going to be able to do it. But this board and other boards have been very good, I would say since about 2002, 2000, of going into the community. Previous boards didn't do that. The members were not accessible. Almost everybody here is accessible. So we're all working for the same goal. We're all working for the students. There's different approaches, but we have to work together as a board. So if there's times when, and there have been times when I've been a lone dissenter or a dissenter in two, we still have to go with what the majority says.
Thank you. Hugh.
I agree with Mrs. Sweeney. But I also think that there are other aspects that perhaps we should talk about as well. Probably being a model of efficiency so that we can actually get more things done in board meetings would be one of those that I would be advocating. I also think that we need to encourage parents to come to board meetings and speak. And when they do come, I want to say, no, I'm not interested in cutting your 3 minutes. If you take all the time to actually come to a board meeting, I'm just going to sit here and listen to you. If it's 3 o'clock in the morning, so be it. If it's 6 o'clock in the morning, so be it. As long as a member of the community are here, I think the boards should be here, right? Should be at the board meeting and say, we're listening. So I think there are other kind of messages that can be sent in terms of being models. I think if there's hundreds of parents who show up to oppose something, then I also think that it would be a good idea to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Huali.
I do think this is super important thing to the board. Integrity is super important, and we as an individual, we should set an example to the student, to the parents, to the teachers as well. To me, I'm going to do what I said. I'm not going to do what I don't say, what I don't believe. However, I will become the true voice of students. That's what I think we should care about it. We have parents support the students. We have teachers teaching the students. And we should put them together for every single decisions to listen to their voice. I think that's what we should focus the most at the future. Even right now, we have to start right now. The reason I'm saying that is I did find the huge generation gap right now between our parents and our kids, especially for us as a first generation immigrants. So we should have the talk with them and then make sure we understand them. And also, because we are a inclusive community, so we have to talk to each other among the parents, and then to understand each other's culture difference, cultural value, and when we make a decision, we should consider all of them. Thank you.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. So as a board member, how will you coach the next generation of leaders to choose integrity and ethics as the norm, even if it is a tough choice?
So first and foremost, as a board member, you have to be a role model, not only for your own children, but for all children in Fremont. And it's important that we carry ourselves with honesty, integrity, and good values. And we make our school district have that. We need to foster that kind of culture within our schools at the district office and on our board. And we have an incredibly diverse community in Fremont, and we absolutely need to make sure that all of our schools have, really celebrate those strengths of our diversity. And one thing is to make sure that everyone is respected, we're treated respectfully. When we disagree on something, you can still disagree with someone, but make sure you treat them with respect. And the other thing about integrity is sometimes you have to make the hard choices because it's the right thing to do. And that as a school board member, you absolutely have to make hard choices, because the reality is we have a big school district. There are going to be we have a lot of issues, and sometimes you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and you need to always make sure that you're thinking of the students and what's best for the students, and sometimes that's a really hard decision to make. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, well, I agree with what a lot of the prior speakers have said, that the key to teaching the younger generation integrity is to model that yourself. And I think we need to do that. And I think there are ways, even when we disagree, as others have said, that we need to be respectful in our disagreement. There have been board members over the years who I've disagreed with them about certain votes, but then went on to work with them productively about other issues, and I think that's what we need to do. I also think I've been trying to promote this for years, is having a district-wide character education program that is consistent across the district. I think that would go a long way to helping our students understand what we expect from them. I also think that I've had the great pleasure of working with many students over the years, serving on district committees with our student representatives on those committees, and I have been incredibly impressed with the integrity of our students. And I think sometimes the adults have a lot to learn from you and the way you all have conducted yourselves. And I cite the work that you're doing on shifting the calendar. I've been incredibly impressed with the work that you've done, the background information you've had, the respectfulness that you've approached different community members about that issue, the respect that you've shown to the teachers as they've needed to make adjustments if we're going to adopt that calendar change. So I really think this isn't just a situation where adults model integrity to youth. We also need to see what you're doing and follow along as well.
Thank you. Norman Howell.
Thank you. With my extensive training in science and scientific background, I've referred to myself as a teaching scientist. And in doing science labs, one of the things I make the students very much aware of is they need to make very good observations and they need to collect very good measurements. And once you have that, then you begin to analyze it and figure out what it's telling you and what it's saying to you. And one of the things I made very, very clear to them is that a scientist who fudges their data or observations will be discovered, and it's the end of their career. Your integrity is your career, and you have to learn that it's going to be found out, it's going to be discovered somewhere along the line. Scientific conclusions and publications and data is always tested by other people to see if they can get the same results. So when you see scientific data come out and been published and so on, it's already been verified by other people who have an interest in the area but who were not involved in the original experimentation collection of data. So that verification process makes our scientific results very reliable in what they tell us and what can be done with them. Now, one of the things that we have disagreements about at time among the scientific community is how to interpret those data and observations. And so that's where a lot of the argument comes from, is what that data and information means. But the bottom line is your integrity is your career, it's your word, it's your bond. And if you don't have it, you don't have a career. Thank you. Who's going to start next?
Oh, okay. You can hear me now, I think.
Yeah.
All right, Diane, 2 minutes. The question is, what is your position on comprehensive health education in our secondary schools and our primary schools?
Could you repeat the last part? There's an echo up here.
Certainly. What is your position on comprehensive health education in our secondary schools and primary schools?
Okay, well, sex education has been a big topic in our district. It has been for a long time. It wasn't just last year. And my position, I feel, is very simple and very common sense. And it's the same position that I have about other subject areas in the district. First of all, our sex ed program needs to be compliant with the law. And in this case, that means meeting the standards of the California Healthy Youth Act. Secondly, it needs to meet grade level content standards. And that includes elementary education. There are some very specific content standards in 5th grade that I think we need to be meeting, like we would with any other subject area. There are also other health standards for other grade levels, and I would like to see us move towards meeting all of the health content standards in all grade levels. So I think that's something that we need to work on. What I'm pleased about with the new sex ed task force is that they are reviewing curricula that meet those standards. So any of the curricula that they're looking at, if that task force brings that in front of the board, I think, I would be happy supporting any of those options that the district is looking at. There's not just one curriculum option that fits those criteria. There are several. And this is a great thing, and there have been new options that have come on board just since the district started looking at coming into compliance with the California Healthy Youth Act. I also think that we need to make sure that the curriculum options are accessible to parents. Right now, most of them are only by the publisher translated into Spanish, but we need to take a look at making sure that those are accessible in languages that are used by our families. We need to make sure that we have parent ed nights that are accessible to all of our families, not just at the district office, but at school sites. And I think, again, this is something that we need to follow these guidelines for any subject area, following the law and meeting content standards.
Diane, if we could have Norm answer next, and then we'll pass it to Freya. That way we're not going back and
Very
forth
good.
so much.
Diane's the expert on this, and we simply have to recognize that around what she has said. I think one of the things you need to recognize in the issue that came before the board last year was a classic religious versus secular argument. Schools are secular, we're controlled by the public, by the state legislature, and of course we have separation of church and state from the Constitution, both federal and state and local. And so one of the things we have to do is to make sure that we stay factually based. We have to make sure that we are staying age appropriate, and by age appropriate is what you do in the high school level is totally different than what you will do maybe in the third or fourth grade. Now, children, even at a very young age, are aware that they are a boy or that they are a girl, and they understand that there are sexual differences. And so what you need to do is to slowly build with them in terms of what that means to them, their self-identity, their personal identity, so that they have a good, healthy feeling about themselves with that. And if you do that and bring it up and you progress that through the age groups and the classes, then you will be able to have a better, fuller of human sexuality and what. As I always told my students, there's at least two things that you have to do, or one of the things that has to be done biologically, and that is anything you have to do to survive has pleasure associated with it. For example, who doesn't like a good meal? We go out and we pay good money to have a good meal because food tastes good and stuff. We like good fresh air and take a good, after the rain and so on, we feel that freshness. And sex is no different. So make sure that we engage in sexual relationships for the next generation. There's pleasure associated with it. And even children at a very young age don't understand it, but they are familiar with the pleasure aspect of that. And so you can't hide it. You have to face it. You need to healthily and hopefully and wholesomely lead them forward to understand what that means to them in their life.
Freya?
So first and foremost, the conversation about sex ed needs to start at home. And I come from a culture in a country where sex and puberty is not talked about. And that's really unfortunate because our students are seeing this on the TV, they're hearing it in the lyrics of the songs they hear on the radio, they're hearing about it on the playground, and they're seeing it in social media, and they have questions, they know. And that's why it's really important that we talk to them about this early on. One of the most important things is to make sure that whatever curriculum we choose, and I'm very confident that the task force, which is working really hard, will find a curriculum that is compliant with state law and that meets the standards for our students. And one thing that we can do as a district is really look at what other districts have gone through. Cupertino, Palo Alto, Saratoga, all of those school districts went through this sex ed debate in the last 2 or 3 years. Let's build on what experiences they've had. Let's learn from their mistakes. Let's learn from their successes. And one thing that Cupertino did quite successfully was have parent classes. So they taught the curriculum to the parents. They had a dedicated staff person to do this for about a month or 6 weeks, and they taught the curriculum. It's one thing to look at the curriculum on a PowerPoint presentation, but it's another thing to have it be taught to you, because a teacher can assess his or her students and adjust the content, or adjust how he or he teaches the content appropriately. And so especially when sex ed is taught at the end of the year, the teachers really know their students and their classes very well. So I think that's important to do. The other thing is, it's important for parents to, parents have the right to decide what is age appropriate and developmentally appropriate for their child. So they always have the option to opt out. But if you have no option at all, then you're taking away the option for anyone. So but if you have a curriculum out there and you have an opt-out option, then everyone has an option. Thank you.
So I am working in a high-tech company. When I see these complicated issues, we always think about we need to have a platform for it. So I do have a platform for sex education. I call it Smart Sex Educate. Smart means S stands for system. Why is the system? System means there's so many components in it. So the student itself is super important, the teacher, the parents. So also, what we should teach is so important, and the two component stands out to me. One is it is knowledge. So we should teach knowledge at school. What about the value? We have value, we have community value, we have family value. So those values regarding sex should teach at home by their parents. So that's super important. So that's the first S is the system. The M is material, right? The material should be very, very sensitive to the age. Right? When they're young, you cannot teach them cookie-cutter manual. They can simply follow it. We only teach them the knowledge. So that's the M. So we should involve students, especially parents and teachers, to determine the material. The A, as I said, is the age. We got to make sure this is age sensitive. Don't forget it. Some kids is mature earlier, some are not. So we don't do that. So R is richness, is right content. Right content. We have to put right content in it. I think the community, what we're doing right now, they're doing a great job. I hope we're going to get very good content out. The T is the teacher. The teacher has to be ready to teach us. Thank you.
Thank you.
The acoustics is not too good. Will you please repeat your question? I just want to make sure that I get it.
Certainly. What is your position on comprehensive health education in our secondary schools and primary schools?
I graduated from a public high school. I had my sex education at 11th grade by my PE teacher for 2 weeks. And that was it. I'm not against sex education. I think we do want our students to have the information. But I think there's some question in my own mind about being common sense, being age appropriate. And I think when it comes to elementary level sex education, I would like to see really, really outstanding curriculum. Otherwise, I'm probably not going to support. I will support only if I really have confidence in it. Because we run the risk of some of the stuff just being too early. I also believe that we have a little too much obsession. Sex education. We don't seem to have the same drive, the same commitment to our students' English education, to our students' math education, to our students' science education. So we're trying real hard to make sure that our kids get A, or really knowledgeable sex education, but when a lot of them are struggling with math and science, and maybe even simple things like critical thinking, time management, stress management, is that really the most important subject? Thank you.
Thank you. I think health and sex curriculum needs to be treated like we treat all curriculum. For the last 3 years, the ACLU has told us that we're out of compliance and we have to comply soon. So we had 3 years to get this right. In the previous 3 years, this never went through the formal process that we use to adopt any curriculum. So what we should have done was, if you take any curriculum we've recently adopted, you start off with a couple of different options. And we have a group of teachers who pilot the 2 programs, or 3 even, if there's such a thing. And then they meet a couple of times and they share their ideas and their feedback and what they like and what they don't like. At the same time, that curriculum goes before our curriculum and instruction committee so that the public can see it, so it's transparent, so it's accountable, so it's accessible. The curriculum that came before us to vote, in spite of having all this time and all this energy, never went through any of those processes. It was never piloted. It was never part of an options program. It never went to curriculum and instruction. In fact, when it went to curriculum and instruction, they were told that the district had already voted on it, which we had not, and they also told the curriculum and instruction committee that we would not even consider their discussion, which we never gave that kind of direction. So when it came to the board for a time to vote, there were a lot of people that said it didn't go through the right process, we don't like the particular program that's been chosen, there are no other options, we'd like to explore options. Some of the people on the board, like myself included, said one of the fallbacks of the 3 R's is that it doesn't include those things that the community wants, such as more education on mental health, bullying, cyberbullying, nutrition, self-worth, those sorts of things, which we needed to include. The vast majority of parents and students wanted that included. It was not even considered. We'll also take a look at opt-out. One of the problems with opt-out, we saw that in a 5th grade class near the end of the year in one of the Mission elementary schools, where the teacher locked the door and only the girls were inside and talked to the girls about things that they shouldn't have been exposed to, especially since at least 4 of those girls had opt-out forms signed by their parents. We need to fix that.
Pele?
And just to clarify, we're going to start with Hewing, go down to Howell, and then go to Sweeney. So just to clarify that. No, we're going to start with Mr. Hewing.
You started.
Okay.
Yeah, and the question's only a minute.
No, I for whatever reason, I'm not hearing your questions very clearly. Right. I understand that, but I'm not hearing your instruction clearly.
Okay, just to repeat it, we're going to start with Mr. Hewing, go down to Norman Howell, and then go to Larry Sweeney. Cool. So the 4th question is, student mental health is a term heard more commonly in FUSD. What does student mental health mean to you? What issues surround the topic? And what tangible improvements will you implement?
What was the last part?
Yeah. What does student mental health mean to you? What issues surround the topic? And what tangible improvements will you implement?
The echo up here is really difficult.
Can you say it without the microphone?
Yeah.
What does student mental health mean to you? What issues surround the topic? And what tangible improvements will you implement?
Thank you. I think health is everything. Mental health is everything. Without mental health and physical health, there really isn't much of anything that a person can say, yeah, this is I'm successful, right? I think mental health is particularly challenging. I think a lot of it has to do with stress. A lot of it have to do with emotional well-being. And so I think the school should start teaching things like stress management. We should make sure that students aren't having to do a lot of busy work. We should make sure that students are not dealing with unreasonable expectations as what can or cannot be done. I think we need the teachers to have a little bit more coordination so that not every single one of them assign the message project during the same day. We need to really have open and honest conversations with the students, right? Open and honest conversations and say, yeah, these sort of things can cause problems. These sort of things can cause problems for adults too. If your parents are going for divorce, well, guess what? You know, everybody is struggling. So I think we need to talk to them. Oops, sorry.
So I don't want to talk about what kind of mental issue is. I want to talk about if you don't have mental issue, what you can do as a child, right? First of all, they're going to have a huge creativity come out because you are thinking freely. You don't have stress, right? So the second one, which is if your mental health, you can handle a lot of failures. So again, I'm working in a high-tech company right now. We encourage people to fail early, but as long as you can recover from it. So that's super important. The other thing I would like to say it is, if you are very healthy mentally, you are going to think about forward thinking. You're going to think about the future in 5-10 years. Right now, that's what we should focus on. Now, what's the problem with our current student right now? They have huge stress. I can see from my 2 sons. My first one graduated already from mission, and my second one, it is in school right now. Somehow, we put a lot of stress onto them, and then we have to fix for them. How are we going to fix it? What's the intangible sense to do it? Now, there's a lot of ways to do it. I'm thinking about a very simple way to do it is have a room, have equipment down there to just go there to sing. And then that's going to reduce their stress.
Thank you. That's a great question. So at some of our high schools, over 70% of our students have indicated that they are depressed or have thought about suicide. That is absolutely unacceptable. And one of the things that I have been working on for the last few years has been to partner with different agencies around the city, such as Youth and Family Services, Tri-City Health, and other experts to come in and talk to families about the issues that our students are facing. Most recently, I helped have a parent forum at Irvington High School to talk about cutting and self-harm. The parents who came to that event were really grateful because their students had been experiencing it. So really looking outside of our schools and partnering with experts so that they can come in and talk to our families, because the first thing is we have to acknowledge that there's a problem, and then we have to educate our families. And so some of the other things that I've done is bring other experts in to talk about things like social media addiction, and I brought in kindness assemblies and anti-bullying assemblies. So we need to again help foster this culture of respecting others, having students come to school, and having them feel like they're safe at school. Some of our students come to school and they don't feel safe, and so no student should ever come into a school and find that they're afraid to come, or afraid to go to the bathroom, or afraid to be there. And so really we need to have that culture of acceptance and respect. Thank you.
Yes, well, I agree with everything that Faria just said. If you take a look at the results of the California Healthy Kids Survey for Fremont, and you can look at the data just for our district, and you look at data that was provided by a study that was done at Irvington High School a few years ago, the problems with anxiety and depression in our district are a crisis, if you ask me. At Irvington High School, they found our students have depression and anxiety levels that are higher than at some medical schools. This isn't something that we can ignore. We definitely have a problem with mental health service capacity in the city. When families look for help for their kids, often they can't find it. I've tried to help families find services in Fremont, and often we're finding people that need to go into Pleasanton or Livermore to find a therapist who's seeing youth and is available, taking new clients. Part of this has to happen in schools where we build capacity with more counseling options at our schools. We need to do a better job with education to our students about mental health. We absolutely have to have more parent education. We need to do some staff development. This is alarming, and I think there are many causes for the problems that our students are having. Some of them are related to academic stress, and we need to do things like address the homework policy that we have, some low-hanging fruit that we can reduce some of that workload that students have that contributes to that kind of stress.
And just to make sure we're talking about mental health issues here, are we not?
We are.
Yes, okay. It's kind of hard to tell up here. Mental health issues are very, very important in our schools. In Fremont, we have become a very multi-ethnic community, and so education is something that's important to those different ethnic communities, and they have different degrees of pressure that comes from parents and students in terms of the performance that they should be producing as they take their different classes. I taught AP biology for 16 years, and when I would get to my unit on the nervous system and we start talking about neurotransmitters and so on, dealing with that, and then I would get down to discussing, mental health issues as being organic problems because of neurotransmitter sorts of things, you could hear a pin drop in the room. I mean, there was no other discussion, rustling of paper, they absolutely glued on the information that I was trying to get them to understand about causes of mental health issues, and particularly about stress. I, for one, am in favor of 4 years of physical education in high school to make sure that our juniors and seniors are getting enough physical activity, which is a way of helping to relieve that stress and help them to perform better. And it was a sad issue many years ago when we went from 4 years to 2 years of physical education, but that was a budget cut because of lack of funds. So I think we have to be open to students. I used to adjust exam schedules so that students, one time they said, Mr. Howell, we have a test on Friday. He says, can we move it to Monday? And I said, well, why? And they said, well, we have an SAT test on Saturday. I said, no problem. I just move it to Monday, to draw a lot of pressure off of them. So it's a matter of working with students to help make sure they can achieve.
Thank you. If you could pass it to Mr. Sweeney, that would be great.
I agree with all the different approaches. First of all, we have to identify the problems and let students know that resources are available. We have to acknowledge that the stress that the students are under is tremendous. It's a lot more than it ever was for any of us, even if we graduated 10 years ago. This is a much more stressful environment. When we look at those students who are on the fast track to go to college, they know that they have to perform in the top 10% of their school to maybe get a chance to enter that school and maybe get the help they need financially. Because a college education could be worth anywhere between $100,000 to $300,000. There's a lot of pressure put on by the family. There's a lot of kids who are victims of bullying, cyberbullying, just their own self-identity, social pressures, what to wear, what not to have, what I need, these sorts of things. So many of those pressures are things that they put on themselves that we as adults know that you don't have to care about what other people think of you. But you can't say that to high school students and have it resonate. So we have to have resources, and those resources have to be made available. And I agree with the counseling. We've tried to put more counselors at all of our schools, to double the counselors at our secondary schools and these sorts of things, so that the kids have the resources. We can look at successful programs like Mission Possible up at Mission High School, where the parents are trying to actively work on ways to try and reduce the stress. Academic bullying is real. Course selection is real. And I would like to go back to the last question. It's only a couple seconds. I was the person who motioned to approve the sex education for 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, which passed 3-2. Thank you.
Okay, this next question will go to Hua first. And after this question, we'll be taking a 10-minute break. So the question to you, Hua, is how do you plan to address student feedback pertaining to curriculum and classes?
Okay, can you say that again? Yeah, put it.
Without the microphone.
Yeah, with the microphone.
How do you plan to address student feedback pertaining to curriculum and classes?
So curriculum is a very important topic in this district right now. My taking it down here, we should have a comprehensive and flexible enough curriculum. When I say comprehensive, I mean we should have all the knowledge the student needed in the future. As you can see right now, the technology is evolving so quick. We should change that one. And by flexible enough means is we should meet the needs and the experience of each individual student, because student they have difference. Some students learn quicker, some students learn maybe another stuff, high advantage stuff. So we should have that curriculum to work on. Other than that, I think we should also work on how many ways we can get the knowledge. It's not right now just in the classroom. We should have the internet, right? Other places we can get to it. We should also put those things into our curriculum, and then they can also get a grade from those ways they generate their knowledges. And other than that, I think there's a lot of ways to do it, but I think I have to work with the board member if I got elected, and then to find out a comprehensive solution for that.
Thank you. Actually, we'll go that direction.
So to me, or?
Yes, to you.
Okay. All right. So the question is about student feedback pertaining to curriculum, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I think that we should survey students at the end of the year to actually find out what they've learned and was it effective, the teaching method or the curriculum, the way it was taught, was it effective? Our students have this, they're born with this practically nowadays, so they learn in a different way. They process information in a different way. When we were younger, we would, read books and then take a test, but they have everything at their fingertips. And so we actually need to embrace this technology and work with them to make sure that they're using the technology in an effective way. So you can look up anything you want on Google nowadays, so you don't have to memorize like we used to when we were little. And so, but how do you use that knowledge? How do you use that creatively? And how do you use that to solve a problem? And how do you use that so that you make a positive impact on whatever it is you're doing? So I do think that we should survey our students and maybe adjust how we teach them different subject matters based on what is most effective and how they are learning in the most effective way. Thank you.
I agree with having a more complete student survey. Right now we survey parents. We have the climate survey for parents, and I think we need to develop one for students. I also think it would be great to encourage teachers to, along the way, get feedback from their students. Maybe at the quarter or the semester, have a student survey just within your classroom so teachers can utilize that information. I also think it's really important for students to sit on the committees that are in the district, like curriculum and instruction. That's a very important committee, and we had great representation with a student there last year. We haven't met this year, so I'm hoping that we will see that again. That student involvement is really critical. But our students are the stakeholders in this district. They're the ones that we serve, and we need to make sure we're getting their feedback about the classes and the courses and the instruction that's happening in the district so that we can make adjustments where necessary. Maybe we identify where we have strengths and we can build on those so that the students really have input into what's happening in the classrooms.
I'm not going to repeat what these two fine ladies have said because I agree with what they have said. I want to take a little different tact on it. Many times when you start getting student feedback on curriculum, it's more about the method of instruction or the instructor providing that instruction to begin with. That gets into evaluation, and evaluation is something that is a contractual issue for one, but you need to understand that the administration owns all the marbles in the game of evaluation of the instructional staff. If we have a bad teacher somewhere in the district that is not measuring up and doing the job, I want to know what administrator didn't do their job to properly evaluate and eliminate that individual. Because you don't, I can point out several instances I know of, where this should have been done. And I've even gone to administrators and said, you need to do a better job of evaluating this particular individual, because I really question their fitness to properly teach and provide the instruction. The curriculum is really set many times by the state. It comes down now, here are the guidelines, you have to follow these. So in terms of what is taught is not so much of an issue as to how it is taught. And so I think that's one of the things we need to be very sensitive to and much more in tune, with the students. They need to be listened to by the administration and counselors as feedback to give them some indication of what kind of evaluations or where they need to evaluate and to take steps to do that. Tenure is not the problem. Tenured teachers can be and have been dismissed. And so that's a cop-out if they want to use that.
Thank you. Can you pass the mic along? And Hugh? or Larry, then Hugh.
Thank you. When we're looking at ways to address student feedback, particularly for curriculum in classrooms, let's look at what they've already given us. They're frustrated with the homework policy. The homework policy is not enforced equally throughout every school and throughout every campus. So we need to fix that. That needs to be enforced by the site administrators. That would help kids out. With classes, when we're looking at choices and curriculum, we looked at NGSS or the traditional curriculum, and we offered it to both this year so that the students could pick what they wanted to pick. 2/3 picked traditional, and that's a way for us to slowly ease into the NGSS standards, but at the same time offering that curriculum choice to the students so that they can probably lessen the stress level, and probably also for us to get a chance to better prepare the students for NGSS. So those are two things that we could be doing right now. When we looked at sex education, we could be doing a better job with the opt-out, and a better job would be, how do we get more kids to opt in? So if we're looking at curriculum in classes, how can we change that which was proposed to something that would be more inclusive or more attractive to more people? So I think that's extremely important. We also did that with our math pathways by offering more pathways to students, those who wanted a traditional pathway and those who wanted the new pathways. This was giving the students opportunity. So if we listen to our students, they're already giving it to us. And I will say the main thing that we can be doing right now is to shift the calendar so the stress that students have over the holidays in December is relieved, and they can just have a break. So that's one thing we do right now.
I believe the first challenge is when it comes to student feedback, I don't think our school district is listening hard enough, not listening enough. Mr. Sweeney just talked about the calendar change, right? We want the students to have the finals before winter break so they can have a true winter break. And that's the feedback from the students, loud and clear. On a recent board meeting, that item come up as a discussion item. Nothing's going to get done. No vote. Not hearing a single person from any of our bargaining units to come up to the podium and say, we support the kids. Didn't hear from any one of them. So I'm having a hard time thinking, so how are we really listening to the kids then? Right? We're not listening. And when it comes to whether a teacher is effective or not effective, when our kids get to be in high school, I think they know, right? I think they know. And it is not just the school principal's job. Oh, how is the school principal supposed to know? The school principal's inside the classroom all the time? No.
Thank you. We'll be taking a short, we have yet you to speak on the issue. Yes? Yeah. Okay. Shall I repeat the question?
No, we're done.
Oh, we are done. Okay, sorry. I'm thinking about the next thing. We have a break for about 10 minutes, and Chitra will explain. We do want to be able to take some questions from the floor later. So we'll take a moment also to collect some, or pass out cards, and we'll be collecting those. So,
you want to talk, Benita? The cards are actually on the back of the table there with pencils. So you'll all get a minute to respond to the audience questions. After we're done with all the questions, we can address the audience questions.
Okay, so question number 6. What are your views on the calendar shift proposal? And if elected, what steps will you take to move the proposal forward? We're starting with Faria Khan.
Can you do it without the...
Here's a written thing from the first person. Who's the first person?
Me.
There you go.
Who's starting?
Who's starting?
So thank you for the question. First and foremost, I'm really, really proud of our students for working on this proposal for the last 2 years. I think it's amazing how organized you are and how much groundwork you've done to make it happen. I do think that there are a lot of pros to shifting the calendar. Personally, I've had to cancel vacations over Christmas holiday because my daughter had to study for finals. So I would really support that. And I think one of the things that we need to do is make sure all stakeholders come to the table so that we can discuss this to make this happen. And that means all the bargaining units, the students, the parents, the board. So if I do make it to the board, I hope to work on this proposal. I think that you guys have done a fabulous job, and we actually have a lot to learn from you, from your organization, and from your dedication, hard work, perseverance, all of those qualities that everyone should have. Thank you. Which way?
Which way do we go?
Diane. Okay. Yeah, I agree with Faria. I was so impressed with the presentation you all made to the board and in meeting with all of the prospective candidates, with meeting with teachers. It was just an incredible amount of work. And I think the most impressive thing for me is that most of you who are working on this issue are not going to benefit from this change. So, as you said at the board meeting, you're trying to leave your district in better shape than you found it, which is something that we should all learn from. I absolutely support the calendar shift proposal. As we all know, it's a negotiation issue, so this has to be part of the contract negotiation with our bargaining units, but I think you have laid the perfect groundwork for us to be able to move forward, because everybody now should see the benefits that this will bring to our students and our families, and I'm hoping that we can find a way. I know for our teachers, there will be 1 or 2 summers that are shorter for them, and we need to make sure that we compensate them for that shift. It's not insignificant to them, but I think you've laid the groundwork for us to be able to move forward in a productive way.
That was a beautiful presentation you folks made before the school board, and I like the breadth of student involvement that you had there in making that presentation. I was very disappointed that the governor vetoed the bill that would have put us on a later start time during the year, during the day for the year, but also in terms of the school calendar. We have an agrarian economy is the reason we have a 9-month school year to begin with, but we're no longer an agrarian economy and country from that. And so we need to move the school year up. For that, it needs to be done probably in stages. I don't think we can do it in one fell swoop. It does need to be negotiated, but I think the board can be rather firm in the negotiations with that, particularly given the input and the case that you made, the excellent data to work from. And so we need to move forward with that proposal. There's 2 things. One advantage that you didn't mention, and that is that teachers, new teachers, young teachers need to go back to school many times in the summertime, and many times summer schools start before we're out of school. So if we move it up, the calendar, so we're out of school a little earlier, that helps that situation. The downside in the transition is that the summertime is used by our maintenance and custodial staffs to clean the rooms and refurbish them and get them ready for the fall. And so if we take a week out of the summer for that, that's going to impact that schedule in terms of how that is done. But it is not impossible to do. It needs to be done, and the sooner we get on with it, the better. Thank you.
First of all, I am so proud of the student, the work they have done. And they have done this work in a systematic way. They did a survey, they collect the data, and then they analyze the data. And then they have a suggestion. They have a proposal how to implement it. So I think this ground, solid work have done for us as a board member, we should go ahead, push for it. There's no reason to against it. To me, it's not just whether or not we should go for it, it's a question of how fast we should go. I think we should go within the first option within 1 year, one shot, because I actually a change manager used to be in my company. So in order to do a change, sometimes the change can take years, sometimes it can take months, sometimes it can take days. The only thing we have to do is just make sure, analyze the change, analyze the impact, and get educated and get it done. That's my stand on this one. Get it done, get it quick.
I already talked about this one a little bit. I want to say something to the students who actually make the presentation. And I'm particularly impressed with the seniors. They want to make this change because they can no longer benefit from it, right? So the seniors wanted to make it happen for all the students that are coming behind them. I thought that was particularly noble. I want to say a lot of times in these forums, you actually hear a lot of words, right? Everybody say the right thing. I want to say that night, not counting Mr. Sweeney because he's a current member of the board, right? One. School board candidates went to the podium, speak up for the kids. Went to the podium, speak for the kids, taking a clear position, even though none of the people representing any of our employee groups speak up supporting the kids. My platform
Testing.
Thank you. Very briefly, the presentation was excellent. Very rarely do you see something that clear, that concise, and that persuasive. The shorter you make it, the more factual based you make it, the more data driven you make it, the more opportunities you have for people to agree with. It's okay, I won't take it. It is true it's a negotiated item, but those negotiations are between the board and the bargaining units. They're not between the students. So what I would ask to find out, you guys have said with your committee you're going to vet out all the problems and you're going to come forward with a proposal. And then I would recommend asking to see if the teachers are agreeable to taking a vote so you could find out where you're at. And if they were agreeable to it, then it's done and everybody wins. So you have more power than you think you have. Get your ducks in a row. You've already put on a great presentation. Get out any questions or concerns that you might have from our employees, and then ask them if they would consider taking a vote on it. I think you'd be very surprised with the results.
Oh, am I next?
Did everybody get an opportunity to hear Huning's last sentence of his statement? Okay. Hugh, would you like to conclude your remarks since the microphone cut out on you at the end of your statement? We'll give you about 15 seconds to...
Could you say that again without the microphone? Thank you. I couldn't hear you.
Could you repeat your concluding statements on the question since the microphone cut out on you?
Thank you very much.
15 seconds.
So I want to say, next time the kids put on that agenda, everybody please come, show up, support them, support the kids. Thank you.
They have the question.
You should have this question given to you so that you'll be circulating. Norman again, right?
Question is, where do you find equity most lacking in FUSD, and what will you do to address the issue? Equity, it's one of the things that we have to treat all people equal. When I first came to this town in 1974, it was very Caucasian from that. Now we're multi-ethnic, and we need to celebrate that multi-ethnicity from that. And I'm hoping that we are treating everyone equally. With that, I'm not aware of any particular areas. The government tends to come down and get hard down on the district very hard if we are not meeting equity standards, and I would see to it that make sure we meet those equity standards with that. We try to do it in teaching staff, but you can only hire what's available out there, so you try to get some equity in your teaching staff. I think there needs to be more equity in our administrative staff. I think that's one area in the district where we lack some equity, is having other ethnic groups represented in our administration. So we need to work on that issue for it. So it's one of those that we have to always be aware of, and people need to come forward where they see inequities so that we can address those issues. They don't automatically stare you in the face from that. So people need to speak up. And I would be very open to meeting with any group that feels there's an equity issue that's not being addressed, so that I can be made aware of it. And once I'm aware of it, then you can begin to address it then. Thank you.
Okay, well, there is no question that Fremont Unified is a very high-performing district, but when you dig deep into the data, you see that we have achievement gaps with pockets of our students, and we need to make sure that we are addressing those issues. At one board meeting, our current FUD to president mentioned that the achievement gap, sometimes it really is a gap of opportunity, and I agree with that. I think we need to make sure that we're addressing facilities issues equitably across the district. I think we need to make sure that we're offering programs equitably across the district, and we need to take a look at those achievement gap areas and make sure that we are implementing programs that address that effectively. You know, I know we have the AVID program in the district, and I think we need to bolster that. We also need to look at schools where the achievement gap is lower and see if we can find models to implement across the district to find solutions that are working. I also think that there was a great program here. I assume it's still working here at Centerville when my kids were here, that rather than trying to get services to kids before or after school, they implemented a homeroom class where we could put intervention in place during the middle of the day to capture those students during the classroom daytime rather than missing them either before or after school, where sometimes students just don't show up for intervention. So I think there's a lot of places in the district where we can look at successes and model those and make sure we're addressing the other issues.
Thank you for the question. So a lot of people get confused between equity and equality. Equality is if you give the same thing to everyone. Equity is making sure that you provide the resources that everyone needs to be in order to be successful, or otherwise leveling the playing field. I think that there are definitely certain student populations in our district that do not meet those, that have a big achievement gap, especially our unduplicated students, which are homeless English language learners, foster, and a few other categories. And one of the things that some of the schools have done successfully, I know at Horner this happened, is to really engage with those communities that don't necessarily have access to technology. So they're not looking at the emails that are coming home. So, making that phone call to those parents, engaging them, having them come in, talk about the programs that are available to help their child succeed, similar to what Diane just mentioned about having a homeroom, having those interventions during school, because some students can't come before school or after school. They need to take the bus, whatever it is. They can't stay after school for that extra help. So having the homeroom, I know that at Irvington they implemented a flex time this year, which is a longer time in the middle of the day, so students can get that extra help when they need for their classrooms. So I think that one of the main things is, identifying those student populations and then really having maybe a tailored approach for each subgroup to see if we can engage those families more and help those students out. Thank you.
We should provide the education equal to everybody. We shouldn't left any child behind. That's my take on this topic. So what we see is not even sometimes is some school has a lot of resources on one side, some school on the other side. So what we should do as a board, we should try to balance them. And we should, again, talk to parents, talk to students, let them to share those resources as well. Now, school overcrowding, I think, is one of these issues should be, and we should address this one as well, because that's also provide equal rights to the student, who lives in that area, and you have to go to a different area for school. That's not something we should have. And the other thing is the learning method, what we have to do. We do have some family may not know. We have some advanced method to learn, and then we should have a way to address that. I do propose that we should have some resources from the board to educate our parents, so understand how their kids are going to learn the knowledge and how they're going to work into each other. Thank you.
I think the Fremont Unified School District has at least 2 massive inequity problems. The easiest one, of course, is related to facilities. The overcrowding problems at American and Irvington are not adequately addressed. There is a real mini theme going on at Kennedy. Everything at Kennedy just seems extra small. A lot of the facility issues at Mission has to do with the fact that the school is really old and not enough investment has been made. So about the only attendance area that has been taken care of by the school district is, in fact, Washington and Centerville. But even there are still challenges too. Washington's science lab don't look too great. But the biggest problem, the biggest inequity, is in fact related to student achievement. Believe it or not, we actually have ethnic groups whose English and math passing is about 40%. Thank you.
I think we all agree that equity, it doesn't equate to something being equal, but there is equity of opportunity, and that's what we have to strive for. When I say there is, that's our goal. It just doesn't exist everywhere. It will always be a work in progress. We're now, from the state and from the local level, you might have heard of letters like LCAP and LCFF. And what these are, to reduce it, these are data-driven numbers and statistics and approaches that we have to take and analyze on our own to meet state standards so that we're going to get the funding that we need to get. This is data-driven for all subgroups, and many children would qualify in multiple subgroups. So what we're doing is we're making our decisions on equity and where to spend the most time and where to dedicate more resources based on data that's driven from the sites and from how well the students are performing and where the biggest gaps and needs are. So we've gone from what we think is best to being forced to use data to make our decisions. And I think we all agree that that's the best way to approach it. With construction, this is really going to be a bigger problem as it goes by. As I mentioned earlier, you're going to see with the board meeting this week that our third middle school conversion is now anticipated to be as high as 56% higher than first anticipated. So when we're looking at equity, we have to look at it as a long-range problem that we have to solve in time, and we have to be adaptable as we go. These are huge challenges whose students' academic life and facilities life depend on it. So we take it very seriously. Thank you.
With your position as a board member, what will you do to decrease the amount of cyberbullying, physical bullying, and other victimization?
We all agree that this is a problem, and this is a growing problem. And one of the things we discussed at the board level just at our last meeting, if we're going to have interventions, first of all, education is knowledge, and we can train students on how to identify what is bullying and what is cyberbullying. I think we all know what it is. We need to give students the resources to address it. But one of the things that we can do a much better job of is what do we do when the student is the victim? And the only way we can tell if a student is a victim is if the student or someone else reports it. And we're having a huge problem trying to get students and others to report it. We've decided as a district that when we do have these incidences, especially of bullying, it's not going to be so much about the victim and the bully, so much so that when I first started on the board, the solution was if a child was victimized, the child could be moved to another school. We all agree that if anybody's going to be moved, it should be the bully. And we've moved in that direction. But the bottom line to solving the problem is giving kids the confidence to be able to report what happens. We've suggested using an example so that students would see this is how a report is filed, this is what happens, this is how it's kept confidential. And the key to all of it is to keeping it confidential, to have that trust. Because once the confidence is broken and once the trust is broken, the students won't trust us. We can do nothing for students specifically who are bullied, cyberbullied or otherwise, unless we know who they are, unless they come forward or someone comes forward for them.
I think when it comes to things like cyber,
Could you read the question one more time so the audience can hear it?
with your question, with your position as board member, what will you do to decrease the amount of cyberbullying, physical bullying, and other victimizations of students done? I think prevention is better than cure. That basically means we have to try put more efforts into educating our students how not to be a victim. That has to be done. And it's not going to be easy, but we still need to have that education efforts going on again and again, year after year, until the kids finally get it. That's number one. And I agree with Mrs. Sweeney. Just like many of these sort of personal kind of crime, there's a tremendous amount of underreporting, and therefore nobody knows about it. People think, well, you know, we only have like a couple reports, so everything must be okay, nothing's really going on with this school. Well, that may not be true. So I think we have to tell the kids, anything happens, you report it. Number three, all of these moving the victim to another school, moving the bully to another school, none of that stuff works, okay? The school district need to come out with much better answers, because when you move the victim, well, the bully just go and bully some of the kids then, right? If you move the bully to a new school, well, what's there to stop the bully bullying other kids at that new school?
So this is actually a problem, especially the cyberbullying right now. It's very common. It's also another side effect of high tech, which is I'm working on. I do think the number one thing we have to do is educate our student, make sure we teach our student what the definition of those bullying is, and how they should report it. So coming to my second item is how you're going to report it. So we should have a system net student to report it. Once they report it, the teachers, the board has to take it very seriously and come up with solutions for that. The last thing I have with my campaign is a movement I call it I Talked. So for those things, if the student really is a victim, my I Talk movement is encourage them to talk to their parents and talk to their friends, and then just see what they have experienced. The other thing is the school itself. We should have a force to execute the elimination of the bullying, and we have to make sure the school is clean of this bullying, either cyberbullying or physical bullying.
So the district actually has an equity commission, and we have someone in place who's a full-time employee working on this. And one thing that this committee did last year was survey the students at various high schools and junior highs, and I think elementary schools as well, and try and find out what are these kids getting bullied in. So by far and large, I'm on the equity committee, by far and large, students are harassed because of race. And again, that goes back to having this culture of respect in our schools and making sure that students feel safe when they come. I think one of the things that this year the Equity Committee is working on is coming up with plans, finding the top 3 reasons why students are bullied or harassed, and then doing some professional development and other programs to really educate students, not only students, but families as well, because this is a community problem. You know, oftentimes bullies are victims themselves, and so one of the things is this is something that they've learned at home, and so we need to make sure we work with those families, and we have programs in place such as restorative justice, so that we can really go to the root cause and find out why they're being bullied and why they're bullying. And so I really think that we need to build on this program, and I look forward to what the Equity Committee is going to be doing this year. Thank you.
I think this is a much bigger problem in our schools than we'd like to admit. And again, I'm going to point everybody to the California Healthy Kids Survey. There's a lot of great information in there from our students about the bullying that they experience on our campuses. And there was one of the modules that we used this last year that students were asked about why they don't report bullying. And there's great information that we already have about why. Too often our students feel like their complaints aren't responded to at all, or that they're responded to ineffectively. And that goes back to some staff development. With the best of intentions, sometimes our teachers respond or try to respond to bullying, and inadvertently, with the best of intentions, may act in a way that makes that situation worse. That's happened with my own children, so I know that this is the case. The response with my child was to, let's see how we can make you less of a target, rather than addressing, let's make sure people aren't bullying you to begin with. I think we also need to have district-wide character education programs that I've been advocating for, and we need to move toward that. And we also need to engage our students with bystander training. Research shows that the most effective way to reduce bullying is when bystanders step in, but our students don't know how to do that safely and effectively. And there are great programs out there to teach young people and adults how to respond when they witness bullying. Thank you.
Keep going. Bullying takes different forms and shapes depending on the grade level you're looking at. When you start in elementary schools, it's more of a little physical confrontation stuff with each other, trying to determine their position or their rank order, so to speak, if you want to look at it that way. One of the things that an elementary principal said to me one time at the elementary level is that when something happens, it's usually the second event that you see, not the first one. Somebody does something to someone and they respond to it, and it's that response that you see, and so you want to punish that particular individual instead of the one who initiated it to begin with. So you have to take a look at that kind of situation at the elementary level, and as students age and get older, then they begin to take on different forms. There becomes more of the talking and backbiting, the gossiping about individuals, and that tends to come into the picture as they get older. From that, the boys, as they start into puberty and start feeling their testosterone and their hormones in, they tend to get more physical, and you get some fighting and stuff that goes on with them. And that, of course, can be picked up and dealt with, but sometimes, not as well as it should be from there. And then you get on into high school and junior high and high school, where we start getting the electronics coming in, and everybody's starting using the cyberbullying part of it. So that's an issue that's more difficult to deal with. I'm out of time.
Okay, we have decided to substitute the last question with a question from the audience. And the question is, how are you planning to attract and retain Fremont teachers in FUSD?
Somebody who wants to go first?
And Diane?
Sure. This is an issue that I think we're seeing as a crisis, and it's not just an issue that we're facing here in Fremont, it's an issue statewide. In fact, it's an issue nationwide. We have a teacher shortage, not just in the state, but in the country. When we look at the values that we're setting by state legislators in the form of our budget, we see that in California, we are spending 7 times more per prisoner than we do per pupil. That's a statement of our values. I don't think those are values that we want to carry forward. We need to be in Sacramento telling our legislators that we need them to do better for our students. When we are at the very top in per prisoner spending and near the very bottom in per pupil spending, something is wrong. And we need better revenue from the state to address attracting and retaining teachers. I've looked at the budget, I've spent time reading that document. It is tattered and torn, I've spilled tea all over it, it's in terrible shape, and I just don't see how we're gonna solve this problem long term with our current budget. We need more revenue, and that has to come from the state. There are also some things that we can do locally with local revenue. We're near the bottom in Bay Area districts with local revenue, and I think there are some things that we can do there. But really, we need to address this statewide, nationwide, because we need to do better for our educators. When you invest in educators, student achievement improves. Thank you.
Which way do you want to go? Okay. As Diane said, the teacher shortage is very real. In the downturn in 2008, and for the next 2 years after that, more than 100,000 teachers in the state of California received layoff notices. That basically emptied the pipeline in education schools for new teachers, and that pipeline is still empty nationwide. Schools of education are closing down for lack of students who are training to become educators. Now, what we do about that is difficult, but I think having worked on salary schedules when I negotiated, know where they are. There are some fairly straightforward, simple things that can be done with our existing salary schedule to make us look more attractive. Our tactic is going to have to be to minimize the teacher shortage in Fremont, because we have to look at Fremont students. That's who we represent. I think we can do some of that and do it within the revenue streams that we have or are anticipated to have, and that can make a difference for us. It used to be that we looked at education as a 9-month job, and salaries were basically about 25% below what it would be in industry. That gap has grown to more than 33% today. So teacher salaries have not even kept track with what's going on in the industry. So if you don't have the money to attract people, you're not going to get them. We have extreme shortages in special ed, math and science right now, but it's going to be across the curriculum in just a few years. So we have to be creative in the way we look at it. I've built those salary schedules. I know where to look at in that budget to improve ours as best we can. Thank you.
We have some amazing educators in FUSD, and I would say that's one of our greatest strengths, which is why so many students, so many families move here, because we have a great district. One of the things that we need to talk about is respect for teachers. I find that there's a culture of disrespect, and we really need to respect teachers so that, our students want to grow up and become teachers. We do have a teacher shortage, so we need to change that narrative, because a great teacher can absolutely make the difference in the life of a child, and so we need to make sure that we celebrate those teachers. California is the 5th largest economy in the world. We're 41st in per pupil spending. We are #1 in per prisoner spending. And so we absolutely have to go to the state legislature and advocate more money for our schools, more money for our teachers, more money for professional development, more money for curriculum. And so I look forward to doing that if I become a board member. Thank you.
Yeah, I actually really proud of our district. I think it's pretty much on the top in the nation right now, and really thanks the teachers' job, and as well as the parents and the board member. So we are great on that one. But I do agree we lack of teachers, but we are not lack of people who wants to teach. So why is that? Somebody wants to teach, but they don't want to become a teacher. So I think the sense is right now is the respect. So we have to build up respect to the teachers. That's the one thing we don't spend any money on it. That's moral, number one. Number two, we need the teacher well paid to support their family. I'm a higher manager right now at this company. Fresh college student come to our group makes over 100,000 per year. That's the base salary. Plus they have bonus, plus they have equity. So it's very, very higher than a young teacher. So we should fix this issue. The next thing I would like to see is the housing. We need working with the city to make sure build up some working force housing for our teachers. So that is going to be very important to the teacher to attract the talent.
I think the answer to how to attract and retain great teachers is actually really simple. You see, because I'm actually a former business unit manager at Apple. I've seen budgets bigger than the one at the school district. I know how to hire great people. And by the way, school district's already spending 88% of its budget on salary and benefits. There isn't going to be all that much money, okay, to provide raises. The school district's currently deficit spending about $4.6 million. So the challenge is no longer how are we going to give more money so that we can attract people. The challenge is to tell everybody that every teacher, if you are serious about teaching, you ought to come to Fremont. This is the place where great teaching and great learning takes place. It can no longer be just about money. And in fact, the best teacher that I know, and I know some of them, they're great teachers. None of these people are particularly care about money. They need to pay bills, but they don't care about money.
Gary, before you take over, I want to tell you, please do not say vote for. This is a forum. We are not campaigning over here. We are not saying vote for so and so. So please refrain from that.
I have no idea what you're saying. I couldn't hear you.
You can't. No, you can't. So now I have to change my response. Attracting and retaining teachers are related problems. In the short time that we have here, we have a great school district. It's a great place to work. The teachers love working here. We try and do as much as we can. We're almost a 100 square mile city. We have very low crime rate. There's so many reasons to be here. The teachers need our support, but they also need more money. So what do? One of the simplest solutions, as far as an idea, is the state gives us a COLA, cost of living adjustment, every year. Let's say it's 2% or 2.5%. We don't necessarily just give that to the teachers. And I think we should take the amount, let's say their base, and if we get 2.5%, then all of our employees would get that same 2.5%. Well, at the same time, that would cause us to have to reduce our expenditures in other areas. We would ask our employees to come to the table and work out a solution with us to keep those cuts as far away from the classroom. That would be a floor moving forward. It would be ongoing dollars that would support an ongoing financial incentive for the teachers, and they would receive something every year. It would be painless, it would be transparent, it would be fairly accountable. The other component that makes it really difficult is the pension increases. Right now, our obligation is close to 20%. It goes up about 1.5% per year. That's a state problem that the state should be settling at the state level, and they don't do it, they pass along to us. So that's a real problem that we have to budget for. It's an extremely high dollar amount.
Now, starting with QE, each candidate will be given 1 minute to provide a closing statement. Wait, you want me to repeat that? No, we don't.
Okay. My name is Hiu Ing. So perhaps I can just say the school district face a lot of problems. I think one of the key challenges is that students are not always first. And That's what I wanted to do. I want to make sure that students' best interest is the first priority. That has to be the driving force behind every decision being made by the school district. And I also want to say that there aren't too many board members or candidates who actually had serious business and financial experiences. I am a former business unit manager at Apple. I have managed huge budgets. I have hired a lot of people. Fire a couple too, actually. Thank you.
So the goal of my campaign is to bring change to the board for our students. I do have a couple of priorities down here. The number one, I would like to work with City Council to have the developer build up more school and more infrastructure for our students. All students, including special needs students, needs a school in Fremont to start. My number two priority is to put more effort to support our teachers. We need respect our teachers, make sure we pay them well to raise their family. Number four, we should have a strong parents engagement to reduce the generation gap and pass down our value. Number five, I really want the board come up a comprehensive curriculum for everybody to follow. And I'm a manager, I should be able to do this for you. Thank you.
So I have been volunteering in our schools for the last 15 years. I've been PTA president at 3 different schools over the last 8 years. I'm currently president of the Fremont Education Foundation. I'm also on the Measure I Committee, the Equity Committee, the Wellness Committee for the district, site council. So all of my volunteer work, and I probably spend about 30 to 40 hours a week volunteering, has been in our schools, for our students, and for our children. And I really believe that, you know, we have an amazing school district, but there's always room for improvement, and I would like to see us focus on mental health and wellness. I really want to change the narrative of what it takes to be successful. I have 30 seconds? Okay. Narrative of what it takes to be successful. There are many pathways to success, and I want to make sure that our students and our families know that. Not everyone needs to go to a U.S. News and World Top 10 college, so we need to offer those opportunities to everyone in the district. I would also like to focus on innovation. As I mentioned before, our students are growing up in a different age now. Technology is advancing at a rapid pace, and we need to make sure that we educate them so that they can use technology wisely and make a difference in their communities. Thank you.
So I've been involved in our school district for over 14 years. I started, okay.
Technology's going to
Okay, so I've been involved in our school district for over 14 years. I started volunteering when my oldest was in kindergarten, involved in PTA, worked into PTA leadership, served at the council PTA level with health and safety and as legislative advocacy chair. I've served on various district committees from health and safety to curriculum and instruction to the curriculum instruction, and I've also, for the last 2 years, worked as a substitute teacher in our district, seeing the challenges that our students and teachers face every day in their classrooms. And the whole purpose of education is to empower our young people, whether that is to pursue additional education, enter the job market, or become productive citizens. And I had the great privilege of working with students this last year on a very hot topic in the district, and the greatest reward I had was seeing those students and recent alumni take charge and lead that effort to advocate for what they needed for themselves, and I think we want to see more of that.
I came to Fremont in 1974. I spent 34 years teaching science at Mission San Jose High School. I know this district inside out. I still have a son in the district, so I still have skin, so to speak, in the job here. There are three things that I see that we need to address. One of them we've talked about has been facilities. We have to have room to house our students, and we're working on that one. We're going to need additional areas. Another one of those has to do with school culture. As our schools get larger, they become more and more impersonal, and as a result, we get more of the bullying and cyberbullying things there. We need to look at developing, communities, so to speak, within the schools themselves. And the third issue that I see is really major is that of the teacher shortage, impending shortage. We need to do what we can to make sure that we minimize that shortage in Fremont as much as possible. I know ways of being able to do that within the resources that we have. I'm a creative person. I look at creative solutions, and that's what I would do as a board member, to look creatively.
And if somebody could make their phone ring so I get a little more time, that would help. Thank you. It's been my pleasure and privilege to serve for the last 16 years on the board. I not only serve on the FUSD board, but also on the ROP board. We have complex challenges. You've heard about a lot of them tonight. I don't think there's any substitute for having that experience, that board experience, to be able to deal with the problems. All of our problems have to look at how does it affect children in the classroom. We have overcrowding, we have construction, we have student needs, we have curriculum, we have bargaining units, we have negotiations, we have relationships with the city. All these take time and all these take experience. I think that the value that I bring and the history that I've brought and the integrity that I bring to the table, transparent, accountable, and accessible, are not only just words and slogans, but those are things that I live by. So as far as having this opportunity, I want to thank you very much for allowing us this opportunity. And I was just going to say it one more time, there is no substitute for experience on the board. Thank you.
You still have time, Larry.
Oh, I thought I got the yellow. Thank you.
Hello?
Yeah.
I'm making you work.
Don't pull it too hard.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, once again, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, candidates. Each one of you did an awesome job.